The sun in Dorne was nothing like the cold skies of the north. It didn't just shine, it scorched. It crawled over your skin like fire, reminding you every hour of every day that you did not belong. And yet, Ned Stark stayed. He had buried Lyanna himself beneath the red mountains of the Stormlands where no gods watched. Her face was peaceful in death, but her final words still echoed in his skull like a curse. "Promise me, Ned." And so he had promised. He had taken the child, still slick with blood and screaming into the world, and ridden like a ghost to the farthest place from Robert Baratheon's reach, Sun's Spear. The Martells had not welcomed him with open arms. Why would they? Elia Martell was dead, her children were slaughtered. And here came the brother of the man who fought for Robert's rebellion, holding Rhaegar's last bastard like a fragile secret. But time, guilt, and silence had forged strange alliances in Westeros. And the truth Ned carried, the truth that Jon was not a bastard at all, but Rhaegar's true-born son was too valuable to ignore. Oberyn Martell had been the first to speak. "You bring us the son of the man who left my sister for your own," Oberyn said, eyes sharp as a viper's. Fangs. "You bring us the legacy of the man who got her killed, and now you ask for shelter?" Ned didn't flinch. "I don't ask, I beg." It wasn't the words that softened them. It was the child. Dark-haired like Ned, yes, but with eyes that would one day turn into Rhaegar's haunting violet. Elia's kin saw in him a second chance, and maybe vengeance too. Years passed, and Ned changed. The stoic Lord of Winterfell shed his furs for Dornish robes, his sword for council scrolls. He taught Jon, or Aemon as he was now called, the ways of both the North and Dorne. Honor, yes, but also fire, ice and fire. The boy grew under the blazing sun with sand in his boots and wildfire in his blood. Ned wrote no letters to the North. He never spoke to Robert again. He had vanished from the world as they knew it, and rumors became myth. Some said he had died of grief. Others said he'd been killed by Targaryen loyalists. Only Catelyn Stark knew the truth, and even she did not understand it. He had sent her one letter, just one, explaining that he could not return, not yet, that there were things larger than honor now. But in the still corners of his heart, Ned never stopped mourning, not for Lyanna, not for Winterfell, not for the children he left behind. He often stood atop the towers of Sunspear, gazing northward, wondering if Robb remembered his face, if Arya still ran wild through the halls, if Bran still dreamed of flying. Then came the day word arrived from King's Landing. Robert Baratheon had married Cersei Lannister. Elia's murderers now sat at the heart of power. Dorne raged, Oberyn raged, and in the middle of it stood Ned Stark, the northern wolf raised under the Dornish sun, holding a boy who could one day claim it all. "Will you let them rule, uncle?" Oberyn spat. "Will you sit here in silence while Lannisters piss on Elia's grave?" Ned looked at the child at his side. Aemon, Jon, Rhaegar's heir, his blood. "No," Ned said softly. "I won't." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind of silence before a sword is drawn. And just like that, the wind in Westeros began to shift, not with the cold of winter, but the heat of something far more dangerous. Oberyn Martell wasn't a man who waited for wars to come to his doorstep. He invited them, he danced with them, and now, with Ned Stark living under his roof, and the child of Rhaegar Targaryen growing under his watch, war didn't feel like an if, it felt like a when. But Doran Martell, the quiet and calculating Prince of Dorne, was not so easily swayed. "We will not burn the realm over ghosts," he said one evening, voice calm, fingers steepled as he watched Ned pace across the hall. "Elia is gone. Our revenge must be patient, measured, not drawn in blood and fire just to make the wolves howl." Ned's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. His years in Dorne had taught him restraint. Honor had a cost, and he'd already paid more than most men. ever would, but Oberyn wouldn't let it go. And while we measure our revenge, Lannisters breed in the Red Keep, Cersei on the throne, Tywin growing fat on power. Do you think Elia rests easy knowing that Monster sleeps like a king? Doran said nothing. He only looked at Aemon. Jon, still too young to understand the weight pressing down around him. He was 10 now, quiet and serious like Ned, but with a fire behind his eyes that belonged to another bloodline entirely. And then there was Ashara Dane. She had returned to Sunspear a year after Ned had arrived, older, quieter, and with her own scars from the war. She had loved Rhaegar too, or maybe not. No one ever really knew the whole story. But she had, taken to the boy like a second mother, and Aemon clung to her like a lifeline. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked Ned one night as they walked along the walls, looking out over the shadowed dunes. "Staying here? Leaving Winterfell?" "Every day," Ned answered without hesitation. "But not for myself." "For your children," she guessed. He nodded slowly. "I abandoned them. I told myself it was for something greater, to protect Jon. But there are nights I wonder if I could have found another way." Ashara was quiet, watching him. "You did what no one else would have done. You saved a Targaryen boy when the world wanted him dead, and you brought him to the one place that still remembers Elia's name." Ned didn't reply. He couldn't. The truth was, he didn't know if what he'd done was courage or cowardice. And then the letter arrived, sealed with a golden lion, a raven from King's Landing, addressed to Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell. He read it twice, 3 times. The words burned. "Lord Stark, His Grace, Robert Baratheon requests your presence at King's Landing. Rumors of your survival have reached us. The realm would know the truth. His Grace offers pardon and a seat at his council. Signed, Lord Varys." Ned stared at it for a long time. Robert, the same man who would have killed Jon with his own hands if he knew the truth, was now calling for peace. "It's a trap," Oberyn hissed, tossing a dagger into a bowl of dates. "Varys doesn't send letters for sport, and Robert doesn't forget betrayal." "He thinks I ran," Ned said softly, "that I was broken by grief, that I was hiding, ashamed. He doesn't know why I really left." Doran looked at him over a glass of wine. "And do you plan to tell him?" "If I go," Ned replied, "it won't be to serve Robert." He looked down at Aemon, asleep in his chambers, face pressed into a Dornish silk pillow. Moonlight, soft on his skin. "I'll go," Ned whispered, not to the room but to himself, but not as a Stark, and not for Robert. "I'll go to remind them that some ghosts don't stay buried." The die was cast. The wolf was done hiding in the sand. The realm just didn't know it yet. Ned rode north with the dawn, cloaked not in furs, but in sand-colored leathers that marked him as a man of dawn now. He didn't take a host, no banners, no noise, no show of power, just himself, 2 Dornish riders, and one secret that could shatter the 7 kingdoms. He didn't bring Aemon. That was the hardest part. The boy had clung to him that morning, eyes wide with confusion, sensing this wasn't just another of Lord Stark's quiet walks along the dunes. "Are you leaving forever?" he had asked, voice small. Ned knelt in the sand and held his face in both hands. "I'm going to see an old friend," he said, "one I left behind for too long, but I'll come back, I swear it." Aemon had nodded but didn't believe it, and Ned didn't blame him. He'd stopped believing in promises himself long ago. The journey to King's Landing was long, but quiet. No one dared stop a rider from Dorne, not in these tense times. Whispers followed him, of course, rumors that he was a ghost, that Ned Stark had died with Lyanna, and now some impostor rode in his name. Some said he was a Targaryen loyalist, hiding a prince. Others claimed he was nothing more than a broken man come to beg forgiveness. He arrived at the capital under a cloudy sky, the red walls of the city rising like blood stains above the harbour. The gold cloaks met him at the gates. "Lord Stark," one said, bowing slightly. "The king is expecting you." The king. That word tasted foul now. Robert had once been like a brother, but brothers didn't kill your sister's son, even if they never knew he existed. Inside the Red Keep, everything felt smaller, duller, as if the golden tapestries and Lannister guards had sucked the life out of the old stone. Ned was led through corridors he once knew well, past courtiers who whispered his name like a curse, until at last he stood before the throne room doors. When they opened, Robert was already sitting on the Iron Throne, slouched like a man too tired to pretend he ruled anything. He was fatter now, slower, the light in his eyes dulled by wine and years of indulgence. "Ned," he said, voice thick with disbelief, "you're alive!" Ned didn't bow. Robert chuckled, more bitter than amused. "Still the same, I see." "I came because of your letter," Ned said, "not for friendship." "Ah, gods, must we start like that?" Robert rubbed his temples. "You vanished, Ned. You disappeared when the realm needed you. I grieved for you. And now I hear whispers from the east that you're raising a child in Sunspear." There it was, the venom beneath the politeness. Ned stepped closer. "I protected a life," he said, "one your crown would have snuffed out the moment it drew breath." Robert stood now, slower than before, but still taller, broader, still a king, at least in posture. "You speak of Rhaegar's bastard?" "He is no bastard," Ned said flatly. "Rhaegar married Lyanna. In secret, yes. But legally, the boy has Targaryen blood, true, but also Stark, and his name is Aemon, not Jon." The room fell still. Even the guards seemed to forget to breathe. Robert's face changed, something dark and ancient surfacing in his gaze. "You dare come here after all these years and speak that traitor's name in my hall?" "I came to remind you of what we fought for," Ned said. "You wanted to end tyranny. Instead, you placed a lion in every chair and slaughtered children in their cribs. You want peace, Robert? Then face the truth. The last Targaryen boy lives, and he is not your enemy." Robert stepped down from the throne, slowly, the weight of power sagging his frame. "If what you say is true, then everything changes." "Yes," Ned replied, "it does." Just then the doors burst open again, and into the hall strode Tywin Lannister, golden cloak flowing behind him like a shadow. "You should have stayed dead, Stark," Tywin said coldly, "because now you've forced my hand." And suddenly, the air in the throne room was thick with something worse than hatred. It was war. The Iron Throne sat silent behind them, cold and lifeless, while tension crackled through the throne room like lightning waiting to strike. Ned didn't move. Tywin Lannister's presence shifted the entire balance of the room. He wasn't just the richest man in Westeros, he was the one who owned the silence, who bent kings to his will, not with swords, but with carefully chosen words. And well-placed deaths. Robert stared between them, sweat forming at his temples. "Tywin, this is not your hall," he said, trying to reassert control. "I summon Ned here." Tywin's gold-ringed hand rested calmly on the hilt of his sword, but he did not draw. "You summoned a traitor, your grace, a man who admits to harboring a Targaryen heir. That is no small offense." Ned's voice was like stone dragged across steel. "The child is no threat to your power unless you make him one. He is a boy, a Stark and a Targaryen, the son of a prince and a sister stolen and used like property." Tywin's lips twitched, just slightly. "Spare me your poetry. The child is a claim, and a claim is fire waiting to burn down kingdoms. Even now, there are houses that would rally behind that bloodline, and Dorne, they'd crown the boy tomorrow if they could." "That boy is family," Ned said firmly, "to the Martells and to me. And I have kept him hidden all these years to prevent exactly this, a war of succession born from lies and vengeance." Tywin's stare was merciless. "Then you failed." because now every raven that leaves this city will carry a whisper of fire and blood." Robert sank back into the throne as if the weight of the words had crushed his spine. "7 hells," he muttered. "I thought we were done with Targaryens." "You weren't done," Ned said. "You just stopped looking. You let the Lannisters clean your messes, and now their blood soaks the crown." For a moment it looked like Robert would explode, but he didn't. Instead, he looked tired, worn, like a man who had spent too many nights trying to drink away the ghosts of rebellion. "I should have known," Robert said softly. "The way you vanished, the way you refused my offers, my gold. You were hiding the one thing I couldn't forgive." Ned stepped closer. "You couldn't forgive love." Robert flinched. "Lyanna died because of this war," Ned said, eyes locked on him. "Not just Rhaegar's actions, yours. You never wanted peace. You wanted revenge, and now the realm pays for it." There was a long silence. Then Tywin stepped forward. "The realm needs stability," he said, "and the only way it survives is if this child is removed. Quietly? Permanently?" "No," Ned growled. Tywin's voice remained calm. "You think Dorne can protect him forever? You think the Martells will go to war for a child that carries the blood of the man who abandoned Elia?" "They will," Ned said, "because that child is not Elia's enemy. He is her nephew, her blood. You may not understand that, but Dorne does." Robert leaned back and closed his eyes. "Gods, help us all." Tywin stepped closer. "You think you have a choice in this, Stark? You think honor matters here? No. You've just declared war on the very peace you once fought to preserve." Ned finally drew his sword. Not ice, he had left that in Winterfell, but a Dornish steel blade gifted to him by Oberyn. It gleamed in the torchlight like a silent promise. "I've made peace with the choices I've made," Ned said quietly, "and I will not let you kill that boy." Guards stirred. Robert's eyes snapped open. But before anything else could be said, a commotion echoed from the doors. A young squire burst in, breathless. "My lords," he gasped, "a raven from Sunspear. It bears the Martell seal. Urgent." Robert waved him forward, snatching the scroll and breaking the seal. As his eyes scanned the letter, his face changed, slowly, then violently. "What is it?" Tywin demanded. Robert looked up. "They've declared it." "Declared what?" Tywin barked. Robert's voice was cold and quiet. "Dorne names Aemon Targaryen as their prince and rightful heir to the Iron Throne." Silence shattered into chaos, and just like that, the realm had 2 kings, and the blood of another war had already begun to boil. The raven from Sunspear had done what swords could not. It split the realm in 2 with nothing but ink and parchment. By dawn, the city buzzed with whispers. "The Martells have raised a dragon. A Targaryen child lives. Ned Stark betrayed the crown." And at the center of it all stood Robert Baratheon, a king no longer sure of his throne. Inside the Red Keep, chaos reigned. The small council was in uproar. Renly fumed. Sir Barristan sat in tight-lipped silence, and Varys, as always, observed with a face like calm water hiding sharks beneath. Tywin Lannister had already moved with terrifying speed. Gold cloaks were doubling their presence in the city. Ravens were dispatched to the Westerlands. The message was clear. The lion would not give up power without sinking its claws into the throat of anyone who tried to take it. But Ned Stark did not cower. He stood in the center of the storm, hands clasped behind his back, face unreadable. "You've doomed the boy," Robert said bitterly, staring out the window toward the sea. "Now every vulture in the realm will fly to his scent." "I've done what I had to," Ned replied. "You would have had him killed if I told you the truth. I gave him a chance to grow, to be more than just a name on a list of the dead." Robert turned, eyes bloodshot. "You call this peace? raising a claimant to my throne, naming him king behind my back. He never wanted to be king, Ned said. You made him one, by allowing monsters like Tywin to stain the crown with blood and fear. That struck something in Robert, something buried beneath layers of wine, regret, and years of pretending he was still the man who'd once swung a warhammer like a god. You were my brother, Robert said quietly, and now you're my enemy. Ned stepped forward. No, I'm still your brother, but I won't let your crown murder the last hope of something good. That same evening, word arrived that a fleet of Dornish ships had set sail from Sunspear, carrying banners of red and gold, Targaryen banners. Aemon was coming, and Oberyn Martell rode with him. The message from Dorne was clear. You will not dictate the future of the Seven Kingdoms alone. Tywin wasted no time. He summoned House Lannister's bannermen. Casterly Rock would rise, and with it the full force of the West. But the realm wasn't ready for another war. The scars of the rebellion were still healing, and now a second storm gathered, one with no clear villain, no easy sides. Some in the Reach whispered they might support Aemon. Others in the Stormlands felt their loyalty tested. Even in the north, Maester Luwin would soon read the scrolls and realize that Ned Stark lived and had lied. In the shadows, Varys watched it all unfold with the satisfaction of a spider who had spun a perfect web. And in his chambers, Ned Stark sat in silence, holding a sealed letter addressed to Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon. He had written it the night before, not knowing if it would reach them, not knowing if they'd even care to read it. I am still your father, he had written. I never stopped loving you. What I did for the realm, for your aunt, for a child who never asked to be born into war. Then he signed it with the words he hadn't spoken in years. The North remembers. But outside his door, footsteps approached, fast, urgent. A voice, low, quick, called out, Lord Stark, a message from the Eyrie. Ned opened it with shaking hands. Lysa Arryn has declared the Vale neutral, but she has custody of Jon Arryn's son, and she remembers what the Lannisters did. She wants to speak with you. More pieces moved on the board. Dawn had risen. The Vale watched. The North was yet to answer. But in the shadows, Ned Stark knew. This time, there would be no return to peace. Not without fire. And not without blood. The Eyrie loomed like a dagger over the Vale, perched so high above the clouds that the air itself seemed thinner, colder, like it had forgotten how to breathe. Ned Stark had not seen it since the rebellion, and it looked no more welcoming now than it had then. But war didn't wait for warmth. He rode through the mountain passes under heavy guard, not Lannister gold, not Baratheon black, but Martell. Colours sewn hastily into travelling cloaks. The mountain clans watched from the shadows, but did not strike. Word of the boy king from Dorne had reached even the savage corners of the Vale. Lady Lysa Arryn received him with forced grace, her eyes still too wide, her voice still too soft to be trusted. She clutched her son, little Robert, to her, chest like he was a prize someone might steal, rather than a child burdened with weakness and fear. You've brought war, Lord Stark, she said, her voice trembling with something halfway between contempt and panic. To my doorstep, to my son. Ned stood at the centre of the high hall, his cloak dusty with travel, his blade at his side. No, he said simply. The war was already here. I've only peeled back the veil. Lysa's eyes narrowed. You expect me to throw the Vale into a fire for a Targaryen child, after what they did to Jon? I expect you to remember who truly killed Jon Arryn, Ned said, voice steady. He died too conveniently, too quietly, and now the Lannisters rule your husband's kingdom. You know what that means, even if you're too afraid to say it aloud. Lysa trembled, then turned away. You speak of old wounds like they'll win you allies. But the Eyrie is not ruled by ghosts. No, said Ned, stepping forward, but it's being haunted by fear, and fear makes you loyal to the wrong men. She didn't answer, but she didn't throw him out either. That night, Ned met with Sir Vardis Egan and several of the older knights of the Vale. He laid out the truth about Rhaegar and Lyanna, about Jon's parentage, about the letter from Sunspear, the declaration from Dorne Martell, and the armies, already beginning to move. He didn't lie, he didn't flatter, he just told the truth and let it settle in like winter frost. Some scoffed, others listened. But a few, especially those old enough to remember the madness of Aerys and the silence that followed Jon Arryn's death, looked at Ned not as a traitor, but as a man who had finally come back from the dead to fix what the crown had broken. Then came the raven from Winterfell. Ned opened it with shaking hands in the quiet of his chambers. "Father, we thought you dead. We grieved you. But now we hear whispers in the north, of a boy raised in Dorne, of your name spoken in war councils. Is it true? Robb is lord now. He is angry, but I write not with his sword, I write with my heart. We miss you," Arya cries when she thinks no one hears. Bran asks if the wolves will still remember your scent. "Come home, father. Or if you cannot, tell us why." Sansa. Ned sat for a long time, letter in his lap, eyes burning. He had no home now, not really. The north had passed to his son. Winterfell was no longer his to rule, but he could still protect them. He could still make sure that Aemon, the boy who should have never been born in war, didn't grow up in one. The next morning, Lisa gave her answer. "The Vale will not march," she said, "but we will not stop you. The bloody gate will open for your riders, and if the Lannisters bring war here, they will find more than moon gates and high walls. They will find knives in the dark and arrows in the mist." Ned nodded. It wasn't a pledge, but it was enough. Later that day, on a windswept hill overlooking the narrow mountain path, he stood alone with Ser Vardis. "You believe this?" "Boy has a claim?" Vardis asked. "He has more than a claim," Ned said. "He has a chance to do what none of us ever could, rule without the poison of revenge or pride. If I die before he comes of age, I need to know that there are still men in this realm who remember honor." Ser Vardis looked away to the mountains. "I'll remember," he said. Ned mounted his horse by nightfall. Below them, the Vale glimmered, like a mirror catching starlight. Above, the sky was beginning to cloud over. Storms were coming, and across the realm ravens flew, carrying Ned Stark's truth on wings soaked in blood and silence. By the time Ned returned to King's Landing, the city was no longer waiting. It was bracing. The storm he had warned of was no longer on the horizon. It was upon them. Dornish ships had anchored just off Blackwater Bay. Not a fleet large enough for conquest, not yet, but enough to make the nobles nervous, enough to make the Lannisters furious. Banners of the sun and spear flapped alongside the three-headed dragon, stitched in rich crimson and gold, and on the docks, people whispered the name of a boy no one had ever seen, Aemon Targaryen. The boy was still in the safety of the ship, protected by a wall of Martell guards, his presence more symbol than force, a challenge wrapped in noble blood. Ned met the arriving party at the gates with Ser Barristan Selmy at his side. The old knight hadn't said much since hearing the truth from Ned's own mouth, but his silence had turned thoughtful, reflective, perhaps even loyal, in that quiet way of his. Oberyn Martell dismounted with a smirk, his spear strapped across, his back and his confidence unshaken, even in the heart of enemy territory. "You look tired, Stark," he said with that familiar fire in his voice. "Too much politics, not enough killing?" "I've had enough killing," Ned replied. "For 10 lifetimes. Oberyn's eyes darkened. "You may need 10 more before this is done." That night, the small council gathered again. The king's chambers now felt like a cage, filled with voices that no longer trusted one another. Tywin Lannister stood stiffly near the hearth, flanked by Kevan and a growing number of red-cloaked guards. Robert, red-faced and bloated, sat, slumped in his chair, clutching a goblet like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Ned stood before them all, his voice clear, his sword left at the door, not because he was unarmed, but because he wanted no one to say he'd drawn it. "First, the boy is here," Ned said, "but he's not here to claim the throne, not yet. He's here to be acknowledged, to be recognized as what he is. A true-born Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. The realm must know the truth." "The realm doesn't need the truth," Tywin snapped. "The realm needs peace, and the quickest path to peace is ending this farce before it spreads." "Is that what you told Aerys before you sacked King's Landing?" Ned asked, his voice sharp. Tywin stepped forward, cold fury in every movement. "Do not speak to me of that day, Stark. I ended a war. You think you're saving this child? You're placing a sword in his hand and pointing it at every house in Westeros. You'll make 1,000 orphans before this is over. And you'd make one more. A corpse to prevent it?" Ned shot back. Robert groaned and stood, slamming his goblet on the table. "Enough. You want me to name this boy Targaryen, legitimize him, while my own heir, my own son, sits beside me?" "Your heir," Ned said carefully, "is not of your blood." The silence that followed was like a blade being drawn. Even Cersei, who had been absent from most of the council meetings, had chosen to attend this one. She stood in the corner, green eyes burning into Ned's skull. "Careful, Stark," she hissed. "Speak it, and you won't live to regret it." But Ned didn't stop. "Not this time. You know it, Robert. You've always known it. Joffrey is not your son. Neither is Tommen, nor Myrcella. They are the children of Jaime Lannister." Robert staggered back as if struck. His mouth opened. Closed, then opened again, but no words came. Tywin didn't flinch. He turned instead to his guards. "Seize Lord Stark for treason." Blades hissed from scabbards, but Oberyn stepped forward, his spear in hand before anyone could blink. "Try it," he said coolly, "and you'll need a new set of guards." Cersei moved toward Robert, whispering something sharp in his ear, but the king shoved her back with a heavy hand. "Is it true?" he asked, face twisted with a mix of horror and rage. No answer came. He turned to Ned. You knew all this time?" "I suspected," Ned said, "but I stayed silent, for the sake of your children." Robert's breath hitched. "They're not my children." He looked at his hands, shaking now. The room reeled with silence. Then he spoke again, quietly. "Tell the realm, name the boy. If the people believe in him, let them choose." Tywin went pale. Cersei backed away like she'd seen a ghost. And with that, Robert Baratheon, once the conqueror, once the rebel king, gave away the throne he had bled half the realm to win, not to Ned, not to Tywin, but to a child born in secret under a bed of blood and roses. The streets of King's Landing were restless, not with open rebellion, and not yet, but with that dangerous kind of quiet that comes before a riot. Word spread like wildfire through the slums, markets, and brothels. The king had named a Targaryen, a child raised. In Dorne, a boy with silver blood and Stark bones. Some called it treason, others called it justice, but no one called it peace. Inside the Red Keep, banners were not yet changed, but loyalties were. Robert Baratheon, hollowed and pale, had locked himself inside his chambers for days, emerging only to drink or rage at ghosts no one else could see. He had spoken the words. Aloud, he had named the boy, but he had not acted on them, and in that silence power began to slip through his fingers like sand. Tywin Lannister had vanished from council, retreating to his chambers with maps, letters, and his own quiet army of messengers. Cersei had returned to the Rock in fury, taking Joffrey with her. but not before making a scene that echoed through the Red Keep like thunder. "You think that child will be safe?" she spat at Ned in the throne room. "You think Dorne can protect him when winter comes? The lions always come back, Stark. Always." Ned said nothing. He didn't need to, because the world had already changed. Aemon, just 11 now, was brought ashore under the veil of night. No grand procession, no public reveal. He stood beside Oberyn Martell in the shadows of the city's stone walls, wearing a cloak stitched with both the sun and spear and the direwolf sigil of House Stark. He did not smile. He did not speak much, but his eyes took in everything, not with fear, but with calm, quiet curiosity. "You're not afraid," Ned said as they stood on the Tower of the Hand, overlooking the Blackwater. "No," Aemon replied. "You wouldn't let me be." Ned felt something sharp twist in his chest, a mixture of pride and guilt. The boy was too young to carry the realm, but he was also the only one left who could. Later, in the council chamber, Ned laid down the terms. "The boy will not take the throne today," he said. "Robert Baratheon still sits it, by law and by history, but the realm will know the truth. The banners of Dorne will remain, and any house that wishes to support Aemon's future claim may do so, without fear of treason charges. When the time comes, let the people decide." Renly, ever ambitious, tried to object. Varys simply nodded. Littlefinger smirked like a man already plotting 5 moves ahead, but it was Ser Barristan's voice that broke through. "I knew Rhaegar," he said, "and if this boy carries even a shadow of his father's strength, and his mother's honor, he deserves to be seen, not hidden, not hunted." And so it was done. Not a coronation, not yet, but a reckoning. Ravens flew from the capital, marked with the broken seal of both lion and dragon. The truth, long buried, twisted, and rewritten, now bled into every corner of Westeros. From the icy stones of Winterfell to the burning sands of Dorne, people began to whisper a new name, Aemon Targaryen, the boy with 2 legacies, the heir who was neither conqueror nor usurper, but something new, something dangerous. And far to the north, Robb Stark stood in the great hall of Winterfell, the letter from his father in hand, his jaw clenched. "He lied," Robb said. "All these years." Catelyn said nothing. She stared at the hearth, eyes distant. "He did it for the child," she whispered. "For Lyanna." Robb looked at his bannermen, already stirred by the rumors of the south. Some called for war, some called for peace. But Robb only said one thing. "Winter is coming, and now the dragons. Ride with it." Back in King's Landing, Ned stood alone in the Godswood. He looked up at the sky, the stars dimmed by torch smoke, and thought of Lyanna. "I did what you asked, little sister," he murmured. "I kept him safe. But now the realm must decide if it deserves him." Behind him, footsteps approached. It was Aemon, still in his Dornish cloak, barefoot, holding a wooden practice sword. "Will I ever be king?" he asked softly. Ned looked down at him, this boy who had grown between fire and shadow, war and hope, and answered without hesitation. "If you're lucky, no." "But if I'm not?" the boy pressed. Ned knelt, eye to eye with him. "Then be better than all of us, and burn no one who doesn't deserve the fire." In that moment, beneath the Godswood's quiet leaves, the future of Westeros breathed its first real breath. Not in the Iron Throne, not in crowns or dragons, but in the heart of a boy raised by a Stark, taught by Martells, and destined to decide what kind of king he'd one day choose to be.